how has working with these legends of lucha libre changed you in ring?
I've been super lucky because I was, I think I was accepted into the role and the position that I was accepted into because these guys appreciated my love for old wrestling. I hate new wrestling, all of it, everywhere.
Why?
It's garbage. It's not wrestling. It's not
Okay.
what I like about wrestling. I just can't stand watching it. It's just not what I like
What
about
do you
wrestling.
hate? I mean, what do you hate? What are something that you see on television now that when you see it, it makes you crazy?
I can't say, I don't watch TV wrestling, so I wouldn't know about that. But from what I see on wrestling shows, it's the general disrespect for the consumer. I firmly believe that your average person does not care about pro wrestling. It's our job as performers to make them care. It's our job to entertain them. And we're supposed to, whether you know everything about wrestling or you know nothing about wrestling, it's our job to make you enjoy the show. Whereas now, most wrestlers and wrestling companies are only designed for the people that like wrestling. And if you don't like wrestling, they say, yeah, who cares? Yeah, whatever. We're not trying to make you happy. I think that's a terrible way to look at it. It should be for everybody. It's imagine if Coca-Cola was only marketed to women. It just wouldn't be correct in my eyes. So I can't stand that about new wrestling. I think that kind of it sours it for me. Where are we going back?
Well,
to?
we're gonna jump back because I have a follow up question to that. You said that it's not really marketed toward the consumer. I know that there's a lot of young guys and even young girls that watch this, that are new in the business, watch my interviews. If you were going to give them some sort of tip as to what you think could be done differently to make it geared more toward the audiences that we have, what could be done differently?
I would say wrestle every match like nobody knows who you are. If you were to go out there and pretend that every single person in front of you has no idea who you are, and you're introducing yourself in front of them every night, and it's your job to make them entertained for the time they're watching you and make them want to come back. If you have those same 300 people come back that next month, there might be 5 new people there that month. Make them want to come back. But don't switch up your game. Don't ever don't ever disrespect your fan into thinking that you're more important than them. They're consumers that are buying your ticket, and it's your job to entertain them. So as soon as you start trying to entertain a small portion of your audience, you're alienating another portion. And to me, that's the biggest difference. That's why wrestling fans are happier now than they've ever been. But I feel like the turnaround in wrestling fans, it's so rapid now. I think there's once kids turn 13 or 14, they're done with wrestling. Whereas years ago, they would be invested for their whole life. They were wrestling fans. I feel like it's really hard to keep wrestling fans around now because they kind of just get bored very easily.
Okay. The previous question was, what are some of the things you learned from the legends?
Anyway, yeah, sorry about that.
It's okay.
I try to stay very classic style. I'm kind of something out of the 80s, if you will. And these guys appreciate my respect for old style wrestling. So when they work with me, they kind of they like my villainry antics, and they're able to thrive off a good heel when they're in the room with me. But I've also been able to learn how to create longevity with them. Wrestling with these older guys has been able to how to preserve your body and do less and make it more of a storytelling and be able to sell more tickets and be more exciting with the struggle and the conflict instead of the actual action in the ring.
You worked with lots of legends already. Is there anybody left in Mexico that you really, I can't wait to get to work with that guy?
I've been so lucky that everybody I've ever wanted to work with in Mexico, I've been able to work with. Anybody that's active, I've been able to work with. There's another company over there, AAA, that I haven't worked with, and I'm not opposed to working with anybody at any point, but I've had such a successful run in Mexico with the people that I've wanted to, and I've learned everything I've needed to at that point for now. So I'm happy to kind of focus more now on the United States and maybe returning to Japan, and hopefully this was all just one of the chapters in the voyage of getting me where I need to go or where I want to go.
You mentioned Japan. You made your debut in Japan last year. For All Japan, what was that like for you?
That was the big one. That's the one that if you ask anybody from when I was a kid, they'll tell you I was obsessed with Japan. Just obsessed. I used to drive to a store here in the Pittsburgh and buy DVDs and Japanese food and candy and have Japanese day at the house because I was so obsessed with wanting to be a Japanese wrestler. And I actually started getting into the death matches. That's what like I really liked about it at first, all the hardcore stuff from the 90s. But when I learned about it, I really just, became consumed by it. And that one was like a personal victory because so many wrestlers want to wrestle in Japan. But now, because there's so much competition, people have to rely on buying their plane ticket and going to a tryout or going to train at a dojo or something like that. I've waited a lot longer for my opportunity, but the fact that, I was given the correct opportunity, being able to work for All Japan and, not having to pay for my flight or my accommodation or anything, making good money to go do a tour of All Japan was something I've waited my whole life for. And I'm super happy it went the way that it did. And
so it must have went well. I mean, you're going back in August, right?
November.
November. Okay.
So I will be back.
How long of a stay are you going to do this time?
It depends this time. I'm still negotiating to see what's going to work out. Initially, it could be 2 or 3 months, potentially 6 months.
Ooh.
So we'll see how that works out. But All Japan's on the up and up. They're kind of, they had a couple bad years because of bad management, but now they're kind of staying slow and steady, trying to raise the flag back to where it used to stand. But I'm proud to be a part of that because, again, like I said, I take such pride in my old school style, being a character from the 80s. I've been told by some of the biggest stars in Japanese history, hey, if you were around in 85, you'd have been one of our top guys. Hearing stuff like that, or those personal victories that make you feel good, but usually those personal victories don't pay the bills,
You hear all these stories about how stiff everything is in Mexico. How was your experience as far as...
In Mexico?
In Japan.
Japan was a lot different. I've wrestled Ultimo Dragon probably 25 times in Mexico, and we have a really good chemistry, and we know how to have a really good match and really tear the house down. When we did the same match we've had in Mexico, those kicks lay in a little harder. Those you're breathing for, grasping for air. You really take it to that next level because it is, it's a fighting culture. Martial arts are such a big part of the culture that, people need to see it and they need to feel it. So the bell rang and the next thing you know, I'm gasping for air because his heel is about 6 inches sticking out of my back through my stomach. So I definitely felt it. And that's my main experience as far as that goes. But generally, it's all the same wherever you go. People want to see characters. People want to see guys that are different than what their next door neighbor looks like. One thing I found out is I wanted to step up, and I've asked my bosses, should I be a bit more serious? Should I be more strong? And they said, no, do exactly what you want to do. Every American comes to Japan and wants to be a Japanese wrestler. That's why they never get invited back, because they just come there and do suplexes and quit selling and, look at the stars in Japan's history. Hulk Hogan, Abdullah the Butcher, Andre the Giant, Bruiser Brody, Stan Hansen, Terry Funk. These guys weren't, suplex guys. These guys weren't the head drop guys. These were characters. They want to see Godzilla films in action, So they told me, be exactly who you are in Mexico. Come out to the ring with your Donald Trump flag. And the only thing I did wrong was I didn't bring enough flags to sell because I sold them out on the first night.
How is merchandise sales for Sam Adonis?
They're doing all right now. It's funny, I don't have that big of a American fan base, which is really weird because I'm probably the busiest guy you've never heard of. I've traveled all over and I've been super lucky with some of the things I've done. But here in the USA, your average wrestling fan has no idea who I am. But, in Mexico and Japan, I sell a ton of T-shirts and toys and just, it's doing really well. And it's cool because down in Mexico, the options of merchandise are through the roof. I can sell toys and T-shirts, flags, keychains, stickers, everything, and it's definitely fun to play with. It's something, I'm sure you remember when you ran your shows, thinking of the new cool ideas for T-shirts and stuff.
Every show we were trying to think of new and different merchandise.
Exactly. So I'm always playing with that myself, thinking what I can do.
we all have critics, people that don't like us, people that will say stuff about us, maybe even behind our backs. What are some of the things that people say about you that is a criticism that you think maybe isn't fair?
I would say that probably the only thing that isn't fair, it would be anybody that says anything's been handed to me. Whether it's because my brother's my brother, my dad's my dad. I would say anybody that knows me truly knows that I love this more than any of us. I put more time and effort into it than so many other guys. Even in Mexico, like I said, I've started at the bottom there. In England, I started at the bottom. Everywhere I go, I have to earn my respect before it's given to me. So I work harder than everybody. When my dad ran shows, I would do everything, not because I was told to, but because I wanted to. I'd build the ring because I wanted to be a part of the show. I would sell merchandise because I wanted to be a part of the show. I would put the posters out. I would oil you up. I'd go buy you tape. I'd buy you food. I mean, you remember, as a kid, I would do anything to be accepted as one of the boys, and it was never good enough. I was always just Matt's little brother or Dan's son. I think now, yeah, it's taken about 10 years for it to happen, but most of the guys from back then finally get it now. And I think, at least here in Pittsburgh, a lot of the people that know me can, give me credit for that and say, yeah, you can't deny how hard I've worked to get it. But other than that, I think, generally the people do know how much I love it. They respect it and they get it. And they know I do everything I do because I love wrestling. I say to you, I hate new wrestling. It's not a hatred. It bothers me. It hurts me. Because I feel pro wrestling that's done right can be enjoyed by the masses, by everybody. Your grandmother, your stepsister, anybody on earth can enjoy good pro wrestling. I just don't see the point in us limiting ourselves to make, the 300 diehard wrestling fans of your town happy whenever we could make, 100 million people happy if we all tried to take care of what it is that we love.
A few years ago, your brother, his career in ring came to an end due to concussions. How did that affect you personally?
Broke my heart. That was the big one that absolutely crushed me. My brother was hired by WWE 2 days before I got released. So I got a call on Wednesday saying, hey, I'm coming to join you. And like I said, my spirit was pretty much broken at that point. That was the spark I needed to say, wow, this is going to get good. I'm going to be fine. Everything's okay. 2 days later, I was released. And that was probably the biggest, the most upsetting thing about everything was that point. But whenever that happened,
I didn't know that they crossed over. That
2 days
has to make it much worse.
2 days. That was the hardest part about anything. But him being there was always kind of like a bit of a motivation for me to want to get back. Because just like anything, I'm sure you and your brother, the plan is one day you're going to headline WrestleMania together. And that was like, in my eyes, as 21, just taking over the UK for the first time, that was my inspiration. One day I'm going to get back and I'm going to headline WrestleMania with my brother. Let's give him a reason to have it in Pittsburgh. You know what I mean? It's going to happen. I kept telling myself that. And when it didn't, when everything went south and, and it all went that way, it was just horrifying. You didn't want to believe it. I just, no, there's no way. There's no way. And I still have a hard time believing it. Especially when you hear the Daniel Bryan thing, sometimes you get a bit of, okay, maybe, yeah, I'm super happy he's landed on his feet. He's doing better now than he probably would have been doing as a wrestler. So, it seemed to have worked out for the best. But, the little Sam definitely still wants to see the day where, he could get back in there and we can headline a WrestleMania together. But, the brother in me, I'd much rather see him in a better spot. I'd much rather let him take care of himself. And, I could never hold it against him or anybody else that's going to, take care of the well-being of him or his family. So it's bittersweet. He's going to be around. And if I ever get the opportunity to go back, hopefully we can share the TV screen together. I'm sure that's not exactly a bad alternative. So as long as he's happy and healthy, I'm happy and healthy.
Did his injury, his concussions, change anything about the way that you wrestle?
No, I've always done nothing.
Okay.
I'm 1985 Memphis heel, and I'm proud of it. I think my style has been influenced more by Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee than anybody else. I can tell you a story with my face and not my ability to get dropped on my head. So I think if, honestly, again, I can't hold anybody responsible, but I feel like if wrestling didn't take the turn in the wrong direction, like I was discussing earlier about it not being wrestling anymore, there probably wouldn't have been opportunities for him to get dropped on his head. You know, people expect something different from wrestling now that they didn't expect 25 years ago. And if it was 25 years ago, you know, they probably still would be wrestling.
You've really carved out your own niche in wrestling. But I'm certain because of him being on television every week, people ask you about Matt Corey Graves all the time. Does it ever get exhausting? Are you ever like, please, I'm my own man, just ask me about me?
Funnily enough, no. It doesn't happen nearly as much as you think it does because I live in Mexico. And it's cool because I found the only place on earth, and I don't know, I haven't spent enough time in Japan yet, but honestly, nobody knows who he is in Mexico, and it's great. Some people in wrestling, oh, your brother works for WWE, and that's about the extent of it. I honestly, I don't get it nearly as much as you think it did. The one thing that was funny, everybody, when that whole Booker T and my brother had this beef, I was getting questions from the most jaded fans or even some of the boys, like, is that stuff real with your brother? I'm like, you know, you don't talk to me ever, and you have to ask me about a gimmick on TV, you know? So it's not nearly what you think it is. I've always done my best to keep my mouth shut about telling people he's my brother. I've never really been, outspoken about that. And I think a lot of people can respect that. I really have made most of my name without even mentioning Corey Graves. Now I'm doing a lot more work in the USA. So usually it's, that guy's pretty cool. Oh yeah, well he's Corey Graves' brother. Oh my God, he's Corey Graves' brother. Which is cool. I'm fine with that. I've kept it a secret long enough that nobody could ever say I milked off my brother's name to get what I've got. So, no, it doesn't happen like you think it does. And I mean, I have no problem talking about him ever. I'm proud of him. I couldn't be happier for him. So if anybody needs to ask anything about me, other than autographs and pictures, I don't do that for anybody. So
I'll have to put those away then for now. You've got the UK coming up again. You've got All Japan coming up. Outside of WWE, the two biggest companies in the U.S. are Impact Wrestling and Ring of Honor. Are those two places you would even consider? Do you think a Sam Adonis would work in those two places?
I think I'd probably fare better in Impact than I would in Ring of Honor. I have friends in both spots. Ring of Honor works closely with CMLL, so I am lucky enough that at this point I don't really have to pursue much. I've been able to just kind of take things one step at a time and just make the decisions accordingly for what's best on my career. So I don't have to actively pursue a contract or where I want to go. But I think if one of them were to pop up, I definitely entertain the thought. But right now I'm happy doing what I'm doing. Independently, I'm busy every weekend. I have dates all over the United States as well. I don't really have a plan other than the United Kingdom and Japan after that. I'm available for whatever, whenever. I'm just happy I'm in a position where I can call my own shots and do what I want to do. So I'd really like to make more of a mark here in the United States in the next couple of years, but my first priority is paying my bills. And like I said, nobody in the USA has any idea who I am. So if it means staying out of the United States for a few more years, I'll do what I have to do. But I've never really worried about making a splash or being talked about as much as I've been worried about making money and doing what's right for my career.
So you're everything's going great. There's no doubt about that. I think you've mentioned though that maybe WWE could be in your future again. How do you get from where you're at now back to there?
I think it would just be a waiting game I just have to wait for an opportunity to present itself. Like I said, I'm busy enough, staying active throughout the world. I think right now my reputation kind of speaks for itself. If an opportunity were to pursue itself, I would definitely, entertain the idea. I would definitely, open up negotiations. But, like I said, I can't ever do something that would be detrimental to my career. And a lot of times, the WWE contracts are very restrictive. A lot of times, they need you to commit exclusively. So it would just all come down to the negotiations and what would be involved. But, it's definitely something I'd entertain. It's just probably making sure I make the right moves in the right directions from that point from this point on until, there is an opportunity that presents itself.
Who are some of the worst opponents you've ever had?
Oh my gosh, I don't know if this is okay to say. Let me think. Usually it's people that it's not their fault. Usually it's young wrestlers or students that they've been thrown into a position they're not ready to be in. A lot of times it's something that they can't control. It's just the way they were taught, and sometimes I get frustrated. Or usually that would come down to, I can't say there's anybody I don't like wrestling. There's a couple guys in Mexico that are a little bit more stiff than other ones. I like old 80s wrestling. I like it to be, if you're good at what you do, nobody ever gets hurt. It's the difference between, listening to the Honky Tonk Man talk about Bret Hart or the Bret Hart talk about the Honky Tonk Man. I love Bret Hart, but I'm more of a Honky Tonk Man. So I think some people will know what that means. But I can't say I don't like wrestling anybody. I'm confident enough that, I can be in there with anybody and do what I do well. I might not make you have the best match, but I can at least do enough to make them walk away from the match saying, that was kind of fun, They might not notice the bad stuff, they might not notice the good stuff, but I'm not going to, send anyone home upset and, didn't give them their money's worth. So, nobody in particular.
We have covered a lot. Not everything, but a lot. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap it up?
Not really at all. I'm just happy everyone's been along for the ride. It's really cool right now. I feel that I just want everyone to love wrestling the way I love wrestling. If I could help anybody ever be a better wrestler, I would. I think one day I'll have a wrestling school, not for money, not for personal gain, just because I want wrestling to be better. I want wrestling to be like it was when I was a kid watching it and enjoying it. So, if I could ever help anybody become better, I would. I'm just glad people, do appreciate what I do. I know I sound kind of harsh when I say I don't like new wrestling. And that's no disrespect to anybody, because a lot of you guys are making great money and doing, what they do well. It's just not my cup of tea. I wish more people could be like the way, it was in the 80s or 70s or 60s. But, I can't change the wheel, So, thanks, everybody. Keep supporting you. You've been doing great here. I love your interviews. And
thank you.
If we ever have to do it again, I'm here, man.
All right, well, let's give it a few months. We'll look you up again.
Hopefully there's enough to talk about then.
Yeah. This has been great for me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot,
Thank
man.
you very much. I learned a lot. I hope you learned a lot as well. I'm going to close on this. Guys, girls, please stop having shitty matches. You are ruining my life.